So, hello everyone. So today's session is not about fixing yourself, it's all about understanding what is actually, uh, you know, happening inside you. When life looks stable on outside but feels heavy on inside or confusing inside. So that is our today's discussion will be. And many emotionally capable professionals, especially between the age 25 and early 40s, so they experience a specific kind of tiredness, and it's not physical exhaustion, it's not burnt out, it's a quieter and persistent emotional tiredness, and often they don't know why they are facing this. And if you are here today, chances are you are functioning, you are handling responsibilities during what's required, you are doing that, and yet something feels unresolved, and this conversation is that space. So let's take that step. So what is tiredness really is? Let's begin with awareness, because anything you got aware, then you can solve it, you can address it. Many professionals, they undergo emotional tiredness during decision phases, mainly when they take decisions. If emotional tiredness is there, then that creates a real problem, but it does not look like a breakdown. Sometimes it looks like mental fog, it looks like hesitation, it's look like overthinking, it looks like reduced motivation and emotional flatness also sometimes. So let me discuss what is mental fog. So mental fog is the one of the most misunderstood experiences during emotional fatigue, and people often describe it as, they say, my mind feels slow, I cannot think clearly, I know things but I can't access them. So this is what they think actually. So in that case, what is happening, let me discuss. So it is about mental fog. What I am discussing is, so that is what, fog. What happens when there is fog? So there is, you are not able to see clearly, maybe to a small distance, maybe to a long distance, right? So when people undergo mental fog, they describe it like they are feeling slow in their mind, and they cannot think clearly, and some say, I know things but I can't access them. So this is not loss of intelligence, rather, and is not a memory problem, it is temporary reduction in cognitive clarity. And when input and decisions remain unresolved, the brain stays in a low level alert state, very low level alert state. So in this low level state, your attention becomes fragmented, your working memory capacity reduces, and your clarity, it drops. Your knowledge doesn't drop. The brain is not failing here. Rather, your brain is prioritizing monitoring overthinking. So that overthinking is been monitored by the brain, and brain prioritizes it. So this is why people say, I feel foggy, but I know I am capable. When mental fog appears, most people respond by forcing the focus. They give more effort, they plan more, they think more. So this more effort, more planning, more thinking doesn't work there. But cognitive science shows that the clarity that improves when the load reduced. But clarity reduces when pressure increases. Whenever your pressure increases, that clarity which you have got, that will be reduced. And that mental fog is a sign of overload. It's not a sign of laziness. You are not lazy. So that's a sign of overload. Let me give one example here. You read the same email twice and still miss the details. Correct? Simple decisions also, when you take, they feel heavy. And conversations, they feel mentally tiring. Creativity feels blocked. So not because you have changed, you have not changed at all, but because your system is carrying unresolved weight. The whole system, the brain, the mind, the emotional system, everything. So that carries an unresolved weight. And when you take a rest, do you think that fog is being cleared? If you take a sleep, it helps the body. And when you take a break, that helps the nervous system. But your mental fog, which is there, that clears best when uncertainty reduces, clarity increases, decisions move towards resolution. And this is why people often say, I suddenly felt lighter after taking the decision. Are not you? The fog did not lift because of rest. Rather, it is lifted because the load which you have has been reduced. So that mental fog is not a signal to push harder. It is a signal to have a pause, reduce load, and understand what your mind is carrying. When clarity returns to you, your mind, that fog naturally dissolves. How beautiful is it? Then another concept, let us discuss emotional flatness. Emotional flatness is often misunderstood actually. How many of you have noticed you don't feel excited anymore? Nothing feels wrong, but nothing feels right either. You feel neutral about things you used to care about. And this is not emotional loss, and it is not depression by default. It is often a temporary emotional numbing. When emotional load remains unresolved for a long time, the nervous system adapts it. And instead of staying in constant emotional activation, it reduces the emotional intensity to conserve the energy. So our brain is like that, our nervous system is like that, always try to conserve the energy. So this is called protective dampening. So it tries to protect, but it is dampening slowly. So in simple terms, if I say, the system, it turns down the emotional volume. The emotion that should be expressed, that is down here, that is suppressed here. And it is not because the emotions are gone. Emotions are not gone. Rather, it is because the system is overloaded. So the emotional volume is bit reduced. Strong emotions, even positive ones also, require energy. Any emotion, you require energy. When the system gets tired, joy feels muted, your interest feels reduced, and your enthusiasm that feels distant. You will feel like you are not that enthusiastic. So this does not mean you have become indifferent. It means your system is resting from emotional strain. And this is why achievements feel overwhelming. And good news does not excite you much. Hobbies feel okay, but not engaging. And social interactions, when you go, they feel very neutral, not enjoyable. People often say, I should feel happy, but I don't. And that should is a clue expectations are ahead of emotional capacity, right? And when people notice emotional flatness, they often try to fix it by forcing gratitude, seeking stimulation, and pushing motivation. But research shows emotions don't return through pressure, they return through safety and acknowledgement. And emotional flatness is not the absence of feeling, it is the system saying, I need less intensity right now. And when emotional load reduces, feeling returns naturally. So it happens, right? And so next, what happens? But in that stage, you can still work, you can still perform, but internally, something feels heavy. And in this case, neuroscience shows us that the brain does not get tired only from work, it gets tired from uncertainty. And when important decisions like career direction, role clarity, life choices are pending, the brain keeps monitoring in the background. And this is called cognitive load under uncertainty. When you are uncertain, there is a cognitive load on the brain, and it is always going in the background. The nervous system stays slightly alert even when nothing is wrong. And think about a time when you had to make an important decision but delayed it. Have not it been happened to you? Right? So you might have slept, you might have gone on a break, but the thought kept returning again and again. The return is not weakness, it is the system saying something unresolved matters. Emotional tiredness is often not a signal to rest, it is a signal to clarity. So, when clarity returns, that emotional tiredness vanishes or disappears. Just excuse me. What people really want. When you say, I want motivation back or I want energy, that's not the real goal. The deeper goal is to feel internally settled, to trust one's decision, to stop second guessing, and to move forward without inner resistance. And let me explain this about psychology. Research shows that humans seek internal coherence, and internal coherence simply means your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions are not fighting with each other. It does not mean your life is perfect. It does not mean you are always confident or happy. It means that inside you things make sense. And when internal coherence is present, that thought, emotion, and actions, right? So the people often describe it as, I feel settled even if I don't have all the answers. My decisions feel calmer. I am not constantly second guessing myself. My energy feels steadier. So there may still be challenges, but there is less inner friction. From a neuroscience and a psychology perspective, I am saying it, the human nervous system seeks predictability and alignment. So when thoughts say one thing and emotions say another and actions go in a third direction, the system experiences conflict. And this conflict uses mental and emotional energy, right? And internal coherence reduces in this conflict. When internal coherence is there, it reduces that conflict. And when coherence is present, the nervous system, it stays regulated longer. Our cognitive load that will reduce, and decision making becomes clearer. And for that, our energy stabilizes. That's the main thing. Let me give you one example here. When there is a low internal coherence, sometimes you say the job is fine, but emotionally you will feel restless, drained, disconnected, and behaviorally you feel you keep pushing, you are avoiding reflections, and this mismatch, you see, you are saying job is fine, emotionally you will feel restless, drained, disconnected, and behaviorally you are keeping pushing, avoiding reflection, right? So this is happening, isn't it? Now this mismatch creates tension even if nothing is wrong. So that's the problem. Let me give another example. When there is a higher internal coherence, you say, I'm uncertain about my next step, but emotionally you say, you allow the uncertainty without panic. You are not panic. And behaviorally you say, slow down, reflect, and seek clarity. So that is what the difference. And sometimes internal coherence matters more than motivation. Motivation is absolutely temporary. It rises, it falls with time. And internal coherence is stabilizing. When coherence is present, your motivation becomes less fragile and discipline feels lighter. Your actions feels chosen, not forced one. And this is why people with internal coherence don't burn out as quickly as others. And they recover faster from stress, feel more fulfilled with less effort. And the internal coherence is not about constant happiness. It's not about emotional intensity. It's not about perfect confidence. And it's not about lack of doubt. Doubt can exist within the coherence. Uncertainty can exist within coherence. But the difference is you are not at war with yourself. You are with ease with yourself. That because there is a coherence is there. And internal coherence is not about fixing yourself. It's about reducing the inner conflict which is going on in your mind. And when thoughts, your thoughts, what you think, and the emotions, that feelings, and your actions, they align enough, your clarity replaces the friction. The friction that is going on inside, the conflict that is going on inside, that will be replaced by the clarity. And energy returns naturally. And if energy returns, then you can do everything, right? Now, when thoughts, emotions, and actions, they align, your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, they stabilizes the energy after their alignment. But when they don't align, the whole system, that experiences a friction. And just like in machines, friction causes wear and tear. This friction is experienced as tiredness, confusion, emotional drain. Let me give one example. So, two people may work same hours. One is feeling exhausted, the other is feeling engaged. The difference is not workload, it's clarity and alignment. The goal is reframed. The real goal is not to feel excited all the time. The goal is to feel clear enough to move. So moving ahead is important. And how you will move ahead? Only if you will be clear, right? So why the goal feels so hard to reach sometimes? Let's understand the gap. If clarity is the goal, why don't people reach it easily? Why people are not getting clear about their goals? Because most people try to solve decision fatigue with effort. So what they do, they push themselves, they consume more information which creates doubts, they seek motivation from others, they try to think harder, which results in overthinking. Let me explain on this. The brain under emotional load shifts into protection mode again, because our brain, human brain, or any brain since evolution, it always in a survival mode. So brain under emotional load, when emotional load is there, it shifts into protection mode. How to protect it? So in this mode, creativity that drops, because brain will not try to consume energy here. So energy saving or protection mode, creativity drops, decision confidence drops, motivation fluctuates, protection mode prioritizes safety, not progress. So this is why pushing harder often backfires. And let me give one example. Think of a GPS that has not locked direction yet, and driving faster doesn't help it. It increases confusion. First direction, then speed is needed. So speed cannot occur before you find the direction, right? Let me discuss about another gap, emotional avoidance. So many professionals were rewarded early in their life for suppressing their emotions. Be strong, don't overthink, just move on. That worked for achievement, but it doesn't work for clarity. Let me put lights on this. Suppressed emotions, they don't disappear, they never disappear. They stay active in the nervous system. This creates the background tension, which shows up as tiredness. Why do you feel tired though you have taken that? So that is the reason. So how to move from tiredness to clarity? Let me tell you some methods to move from tiredness to clarity, because whole our discussion is about clarity, how to get the clarity. So method number 1, awareness before action. So before you take any action, so let's be aware of that. What is happening inside me? So the first method is not doing, it's noticing, asking what decision is quietly waiting for clarity. So naming it, that reduces the load. And the science behind it is naming the experiences, it reduces the activity in emotional centers of the brain and increases regulation. So when reduces the activity, the traffic is less in the emotional brain. When traffic is less, automatically less traffic means what? The road is clear. So it increases the regulation, your speed, you can increase your speed, your clarity is there now. For example, people often feel lighter simply by acknowledging, I am unclear about my next step. Just the acknowledgement. So that helps. And method number 2 is emotional acknowledgement. That's what I just gave hints. Instead of fixing emotions, acknowledge them. I feel uncertain. I feel tired. But without judgment, you acknowledge that. No judgment. Whatever I am feeling, just accept it, acknowledge it. Here is the science behind it. Why? Why to acknowledge? The acknowledgement calms the nervous system and restores the cognitive flexibility. And cognitive flexibility is the mind's ability to shift the perspective and adapt the thinking and respond effectively to the change. Let me tell it again. So that cognitive flexibility is the mind's ability to shift the perspective, adapt the thinking, and respond effectively to the change. So in simple terms, if I say, it is the ability to see more than one option, to adjust when something is not working, and to think without getting stuck. It is not about intelligence, it's about mental adaptability. So that's what more needed actually. And when cognitive flexibility is present, people often say, I can see multiple possibilities. I'm less stuck in one way of thinking. And I can reconsider without feeling threatened. And decisions feel easier to adjust. And there is less rigidity and less panic actually. Let me give scientific explanations to this. Our neuroscience shows that cognitive flexibility depends on working memory, emotional regulation, and reduced stress load. So when the nervous system is regulated, the brain can shift the gears very smoothly. And but when emotional pressure is very high, the brain narrows the focus, rigid thinking increases, it's not flexible now, black and white thinking appears. So this is not a failure, but it's the brain protecting itself again. Brain is always in a protection mode. Let me give one example of low cognitive flexibility. What happens when there is a low cognitive flexibility? Someone think it has to be this way, and they struggle to consider the alternatives. They have only one way, they don't have alternatives. They consider only one way, and they change plan. They accept uncertainty, and small obstacles feel overwhelming. They were dumbfounded by the small obstacles. Their mind is not ready to overcome the obstacles, though they are very small. Let me give another example of high cognitive flexibility. Someone thinks, this is not working, let me adjust. So they can pause, not panic. They revise the decisions. If decision goes wrong, then they revise it. They explore different options. They feel more mentally spacious also. So why this matters, cognitive flexibility in decision making phase? Because decision always requires evaluating the options, weighing the consequences. What are the consequences? They should weigh that, and adapting as new information emerges. So they will not get panic of the new informations, new changes. So evaluating options, then weighing the consequences, and adapting the new information emerges. So all these three are required in decision phase. So when cognitive flexibility is very low, this decision feels very heavy, fear increases, overthinking loops form, right? And when flexibility is high, thinking becomes fluid, it flows smoothly, confidence stabilizes, and actions feel possible. So, cognitive flexibility is not about indecision or lack of commitment, changing your mind constantly. Rather, it is the ability to adjust without losing yourself. That is important. When you lose yourself, you lose the gear. And cognitive flexibility allows the mind to move without resistance. That is what's important for our brain, for our emotional health. And when emotional load that reduces, flexibility increases naturally. And clarity is not about forcing the better thinking, it's about creating the conditions where thinking can adapt. Adaptability, flexibility, fluidity of thoughts, right? Let me tell you the method number 3, that is structured reflection. Reflection alone can loop. Structured reflection creates the clarity, and this is where guided support helps, not by giving answers, but by organizing the thinking. And scientific studies show supported reflections lead to better decision quality than isolated rumination. And isolated rumination is that habit of thinking repeatedly about the same issue alone without gaining new insight or new resolutions. So it feels like reflection, but it is not real reflection. Reflection should move forward, and reflection moves the thinking forward, and rumination keeps thinking circling, right? That rumination that keeps the thinking process circling. It comes back to the same place where we have started. So that's the pity is. And people experiencing isolated rumination often say, I keep thinking about it, but nothing changes. I have analyzed this so many times and I understand the problem, yet I'm still stuck. My mind doesn't rest even when I stop working. So that is the mental effort. Our brain consumes more energy there. Energy is wasted there. So you lose focus and you don't get clarity. So let me explain the science behind it. When a person thinks alone under emotional load, the brain replays the familiar thought pattern, the old thought patterns, and emotional centers remain activated. New neural pathways are not engaged there. As long as the new neural pathways are not engaged, new thoughts, creative thoughts, forward thought will not occur. Right? Only familiar thought will occur, and the man or the person will reach to the same point where he has started thinking. So stress narrows the perspective again. Instead of insight you get, the mind repeats what it already knows. And this is why rumination, what I told, it increases fatigue, it reduces the cognitive flexibility again, and it strengthens the self-doubt. And the system is working, but not integrating there. Let me give one example. Somebody is in a career decision phase, and that person keep asking, should I leave or should I stay? They think at night, in the shower also, during the breaks also, but always form and from the same emotional position they are thinking. no new clarity emerges in that case. So because they are not asking the right question to them. And if I talk another example of self-questioning, someone is keep replaying, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? You think of the question, what answer you will get. Each repetition increases tension, not understanding at all. What's wrong with me? Right? And if that rumination I talked about, rumination gives a false sense of control. What is that? At least I'm thinking, I'm not ignoring the issue, but without structure, without perspective, and without regulation, right? And if structure is not there, perspective is not there, regulation is not there, the brain stays in protection mode and thinking loop instead of evolves. Effort increases, but insight doesn't increase. That is the main problem of rumination. And that rumination, what you talk about, it is not deep reflection, and it is not problem solving also, and it is not emotional processing also. So what does it require? It requires safety, a perfect structure, a perspective. But rumination lacks all these three: safety, structure, perspective, everything. Right? So isolated rumination, that does not mean you are thinking too little. You are thinking. It means you are thinking without support, without structure, without regulation. And clarity never comes from thinking harder alone. It comes from thinking differently. Do you agree with me? Let me give one example. A conversation that brings clarity often restores energy more than rest, isn't it? So let me discuss about method 4 for some time. So small aligned actions. So why small actions matter the most? Small actions. So once clarity increases, action feels lighter, right? And not because effort increases, you have not increased the efforts, but because that resistance between the mind with the friction, that is dropped. And this is one of the most misunderstood parts of the change. And most people, they believe, if I will try harder, action will happen. But sustainable action does not begin with force, it begins with alignment. The clarity is present, emotional load reduces, the nervous system exits protection mode, and cognitive flexibility increases, right? So that's what happens when there will be an alignment and when clarity is present. In this state, the brain no longer spends energy on internal conflicts. So that freed energy, which is restored or shaped, so that freed energy becomes available for taking action, not to overthink. And that action feels now very simpler, more natural, and less draining. And not because you became more disciplined, but because that internal friction decreases. Very simple, internal friction decreases. So after periods of emotional fatigue or uncertainty, the system does not respond well to big demands. But small actions, they signal safety, they rebuild trust with yourself, because your brain will believe that yes, I am achieving something, even it is small also, and they restore the momentum gradually. The belief system will increase, you will trust yourself, your self-esteem will be increased, and they work with nervous system, they don't work against the nervous system. So that's the great thing. Now let me give one example here. somebody is thinking about career clarity. After understanding what truly matters, someone does not immediately change the job. So what do? They update a resume. They have one honest conversation with somebody or some people. They research and the research options very calmly, and these actions feel doable, not overwhelming, right? And then he will take the decision. Now let me give another example. Let me relate to the emotional well-being here. Instead of forcing a full routine, someone starts sleeping slightly earlier, journals for 5 minutes, takes a short reflective walk. So these are very small habits or small actions, but these actions don't feel like effort, they feel supportive. And why these aligned actions create momentum? Aligned actions, they reinforce the clarity, they reduce the self-doubt, and they rebuild the confidence. And each small step confirms I can move without pushing. And momentum builds not from intensity, but from consistency without resistance. And uh, what this is not about forcing habits. This is not about sudden transformation that you expect. And it's not dramatic change will occur. Rather, it is the movement that feels internally acceptable. And when clarity leads, action follows naturally. And small aligned actions don't drain your energy, they restore your energy. That is important. And that's why sustainable change begins from the small actions. And our emotional tiredness is not your enemy, it is information. It appears when something meaningful needs your attention. And when awareness comes fast, the system relaxes. And when clarity increases, your energy follows. And when energy follows means you can achieve everything. In today's conversation, if resonated, there is nothing you need to do immediately, dear friends. Awareness itself is progress. And for those who are in active decision phase and prefer guided clarity, I offer 30-minute clarity and direction session. It's not advice. It's a structured space for you to understand what's actually happening, and details are available. Take your time, please. So thank you for joining me in this session, dear friends, and have a very nice day to all of you, and stay connected, stay happy, and stay emotionally regulated by getting your clarity. Thanks a lot.